So welcome back to another Young Blooms tutorial. Lovely as always to be able to do this and to enjoy the sort of creative process. This one's slightly different, a bit of a, not a two-parter, but I'm be doing two things sort of alongside each other as we go. Anyway, to backtrack slightly, to start the story off, I live with my husband, live in quite an old house. It's sort of built in the 1830s. So window-wise, you might wonder where I'm going with this, but stay with me. Window-wise, there's no windowsills, there's no window ledges. The only one there is in the bathroom. And so growing plants in my house is a bit of a mission because it's quite dark. Anyway, one of the plants that I have in my bathroom is a very beautiful and quite old now, probably, I don't know, 5-6 years old. It's a stephanotis. And every time around this so every point in this year, it obviously flowers. One of the highlights of the plant life. So stephanotis, I've always looked at it and thought I must do something with stephanotis because I don't use it very often in floristry work. As it started to flower, I was like, great, I can do a YouTube tutorial on how to wire these beauties. Because I would say in the UK, stephanotis is maybe, it can be quite pricey. Maybe it was used in the sort of more in the 90s. I'm not sure. I don't see it used as often these days. But the flower itself, I mean, the scent is just unbelievable. My bathroom for like probably 2 weeks, 3 weeks just gets filled with the scent of this flower. It's gorgeous. So I think it's one of those things that's really helpful to understand how to use in floristry because it is a slightly more unusual flower. But let's get started. So, in terms of wiring these flowers, I did some research on I just googled and found a brilliant YouTube tutorial by a lady who is AFID, whether she's the head of the AFID, I don't know, or she's part of their gang. She is the American Floristry Institute of Design. I think that's right. It's quite an old YouTube video, but you can tell she's jolly experienced at what she's doing, and she kind of talks through the hydration process for these. So if you're buying them in the market and not sort of chopping them off a plant, they'll come in a little box and you just get single pips. So they'll be like that basically. And her recommendation is that you give them all a chop, the stem a chop, and then you put them in a bath of tepid water for about 30 minutes to hydrate them, and they will get plumper, and then you can use them. She then sprays them with crowning glory, which again we don't tend to use, well I don't tend to use in the UK. It's more a US based thing, I think, because of heat and that kind of thing. It keeps the moisture in, the crowning glory does. So she sprays them with that, then she lets them dry, and then she puts them in a hydration box. So if you watch Passion Flower Sue, she talks about hydration boxes a lot, really useful sort of thing. Anyway, worth Googling and having a look at her techniques. But there was 2 ways that she wired them, and one was utterly genius. I never knew this. So you can buy boxes of stephanotis fake stems, basically. So what you do is you break the calyx off. So the green bit here, you break this section off. I'm not going to do it because I want to use all of these. Actually, I could. So, how you do that, I don't know. Oh, there you go. Oh, that comes off quite easily. So, the flower is hollow down the middle, and it's quite a neat little thing here. So you break that off, and then you get these fake stems. You push them up the bottom of it just to remove the. Come on. Whoop. There you go. So the stamen, or whatever it is in the middle, you push that fake stem up, get it in, and then essentially you kind of twizzle this thing in to the bottom of this, and it sort of locks into place and gives you a stem to play with, which is much longer. It's about that sort of length. So it's quite fascinating. It feels like something from the 80s, but that's an option. We're not going to do that. We're going to do a wiring technique because what I am going to put these into and have just started before I started doing this is a flower crown. The lady, I should remember her name. She had a beautiful smile, but I've lost my train of thought. That's it. She was using a 22 gauge wire, which was a green sort of stub wire. I'm not going to use a green wire. I'm going to use just a silver rose wire because of what I'm putting these things into. So because I'm putting them onto a flower crown, I want something that's a lot lighter weight. But one of the things that she showed how to use those fake stems, which I thought were just genius. But the second one, using wire, she created a hairpin with her green stub wire, and then she got a piece of tissue. She put a dab of it here, so she kind of lodged it in the U of the hairpin, and then she threaded it down. So because these rose wires are quite fine, you do have to be a bit more sort of robust pushing. But basically what that tissue does is help hydrate the flower, which, you know, is genius, but you do have to get it in place and help it sort of settle where you want it to settle. Whoop. I don't think that quite went in. No. There we go. And then, so it's got a little hydration pocket there, and you can then wire the bottom, tape the bottom here. So I'll show you that process again. So once you've hydrated them, you know, you've given them that 30-minute bath, you have got yourself a fine rose wire, you've done a hairpin, you've got a teeny tiny little bit of wet tissue paper. Oop, didn't quite work, and it is teeny tiny. You've wedged it in the U of the tube, the hairpin. Getting the words mixed up. And then you've threaded it down. And like I say, I think these wires really are too fine for if you were to do these in a sort of wiring them for a bouquet, they're way too fine, so you would have to use a thicker gauge, but I'm going to persevere. And then you're disappearing the tissue and the wire, and it's done. So quite a clever little technique. So that's two done. So hopefully I'll show you the taping there as well. So that's the wiring. So using that rose wire, soft little bit of tissue, then all you do is your gutter tape, stretchy tape, and you're taping the bottom, and that's taped. So that's ready to play with. So I think key to this flower is its hydration, making sure it's conditioned well and prepared. Wired using that tissue in the middle technique to keep it nice and hydrated, and then taped. If you're going to put it into a bouquet, you're using a thicker gauge wire because you want something that's a bit more sturdy, and then away you go. So I have started my flower crown off, and I've just put one stephanotis in at the top so far, but I'm going to carry on with that, and then you can see what it looks like as we get round. So I'll be back in a minute. Okay, so the flower crown is coming along quite nicely. Hopefully you can see this okay. I've only got two pipettes so far, I think that's what you call them, of the stephanotis in. But this is a mixture of spray rose, nigella, lavender mist, some stock in there, the stephanotis, and some lisianthus, and a bit of gunny uke. So it's going to be quite a big crown, but sort of summery colours. I think it's quite lovely, really. So I've got, I'll just do a bit of this with you, and keep wiring stuff in. I think the thing to remember is the conditioning for a crown, you know, making sure that everything has had a really good drink beforehand. The Nigella, I'm not sure in terms of how it would hold up, but the one thing that I liked about that, the YouTuber, the AFID lady, was her encouragement was just to practice and to experiment and see what worked. And I think that's such a good sort of ethos to have, because that's how you learn. You know, that's how I've learned, and that's how you find out what works for yourself and what doesn't. And I think that's a good way to go. The smell of this is just amazing. You could really sell this to a bride, you know, just for the sheer, make sure they haven't got hay fever, but just for the sheer scent, it's just heavenly. Right, going to put another stephanotis in. Now, because it's wired, I can bend it to sort of position that I want. Actually, no, I'm not. I'm going to put another spray rose in. This is an interesting one because I think I've picked shape-wise a flower. I've picked a lot of round-headed flowers, and so I had to sort of, that's why I put the eucalyptus in, just to break it up a bit. And also, I mean, the Nigella is less round, but it's got quite a flat head to it. And I think the stephanotis needs to sit up above because of the way the petals are shaped. So you sort of want to find the right placement for it, really. The Lisianthus little, the buds of Lisianthus help to sort of break the crown up a bit, which is good. I'm losing my train of thought. I need to concentrate. And I always think the crowns are more a puzzle. You know, you're just fitting pieces in as you go, and getting them to where you want them to be. It's worth taking the time, you know, making sure everything is nice and secure. It's not going to fall apart on you. You don't want that. So I will carry on and finish to the end and come back and show you the finished result. So the crown is all done. All the material is wired and taped on, and the stephanotis, I mean, A, it smells amazing, and B, just looks beautiful. Feels quite robust, so just remembering that that piece of wet tissue is down the neck of the flower is going to keep it hydrated, which is great. So I'm going to give this a mist and let it settle a bit, but I will show you some photos of it in place. So hopefully that's helpful. I've enjoyed sort of experimenting with these heads, and they do feel like something you don't need to be afraid of. I don't know why in my head they've always been something that sort of, gosh, you know, would never touch those or never use them. But as always, worth experimenting, worth having a play. So they sort of fit quite nicely into this sort of summery flower crown. The blues and the pale pinks and the whites all seem to kind of complement each other, which is lovely. So thank you as always to new subscribers. Hope you're enjoying the tutorials. Do comment, do subscribe, click like, all of that kind of stuff. It's brilliant, I really appreciate it. These tutorials, as always, are an entryway into the flower school to give you a picture of what the flower school is like, the tutorials are like. Yeah, if you want to look at more stuff about the flower school, go to youngbloomsflowerschool.com. And you can watch, there are some free tutorials to watch, and you can get more of an idea of what's going on. But as always, thank you for watching, hope you've enjoyed it, and I look forward to seeing you next time.